Household easy, we close fast and anytime that works for you. Your house don't need it, we'll throw cash, it hits so fast, don't know what to do. Wanted to care to keep it. No.
Rehabbing, this is part 2. So again, just to recap, BRRRR, it's an acronym, stands for buy, rehab, rent out, refinance, repeat. So we are on the first R right now, rehabbing properties. So why on earth would we want to rehab properties? Seems like a lot of work, right, Dave? Well, here's the thing. Your asset has new stuff in it when you rehab it. All right? I don't want to buy a house and rent it out if I'm going to need to replace the air conditioner in 6 or 8 months. I don't want to buy a house and rent it out if I'm going to have to replace the roof in 3 years. It just seems like it's not necessarily going to be a fun experience. It's going to require a lot of time, a lot of money down the road. I want to fix all that stuff today. That's also a beautiful thing about the BRRRR method is I'm adding rentals to my portfolio that have been rehabbed. They don't need a bunch of work, right? So I'm going to prevent the maintenance. I'm going to do preventative maintenance, and I'm going to get rid of all that capital expenditures, which is our CapEx. So what do I typically do? I put roofs on properties. I like to change out the windows. I put down new flooring. I like to do the kitchens. I like to do the baths. I typically always, unless it's like within the last 5 to 10 years, replace HVACs, water heaters, condensers. All right, nice place for tenants and small families. That's what I want to do when I'm rehabbing a property. I want to make it nice. I want my tenants to stay there. I also want to get the highest amount possible in rent. Rehabbing will help you do that. And I also want to get the highest appraisal I possibly can, because that's what allows you to do this with little and even more fun and, more importantly, none of your own money. So there's multiple reasons that you want to rehab. You're also going to reduce the bank's risk. So they lend on the appraisal only. So there's multiple reasons to rehab. One that I didn't even add on this list here that I can think of just off the fly is I'm going to rehab to increase the value. It's going to increase the equity in my deal. So I got new deals. I'm going to prevent that maintenance and capital expenditures. I'm going to provide a nice place for my tenants. I'm going to get high rent. I'm going to get a high appraisal. And I'm going to make it really, really, really easy for a bank to say yes, because I'm bringing them a property on a silver platter that they're going to lend on. And if I screw up, which I don't screw up, and you shouldn't either, so pay your bills. But if you do screw up, they can come take that property from you. Now, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the banker, right? In the BRRRR method, you want to get really good, really just in real estate in general. You want to get really good at putting yourself in other people's shoes. If you can get really good at putting yourself in other people's shoes, it's going to make everything in life much easier for you, not just in real estate, in life. So put yourself in the bank's shoes for a minute. You're the bank. I'm the investor. I go buy a house, I fix it up, and I bring it to you. And I say, hey, I want to get a loan on this property. Are you going to be more likely to lend me and give me a loan on this property, knowing that if I don't pay you, you can take this thing back and pretty easily sell it because there's not a lot of work that's needed on it, versus the opposite of that, where I may bring you a deal to lend on and it needs a bunch of work? No, banks don't want that. They want to make their life easy if you don't pay. So that is why we rehab. Multiple reasons, but all of these cumulatively are going to create a ton of equity and a ton of value. And ultimately, they're going to make this possible. All right, rehab for a rental versus rehab for a retail play. This is a question I know a lot of people are having. When we do a rehab for a rental, we are not doing granite countertops. We are not doing, really high-end light fixtures or plumbing fixtures. We are not doing, we're not going to go into a house and spend 60 grand putting in hydrothermal or geothermal, HVAC systems. Come on, this is not high end. We're going to be using standard materials, basic finishes. Essentially, we're going to tenant-proof the property. We are going to update it and rehab it, but we're not going to go gangbusters, right? We're just going to be conservative. We are going to shoot to have a lower cost than a retail rehab, and we're going to shoot to have less time. Typically, when we rehab a property, it's going to take us anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks. So just look at yours accordingly. Whenever you're doing a retail for a rehab, it's going to be higher end materials, guys. It's going to be higher end finishes. You want the wow factor on a retail, on a fix and flip. But on a rental, you don't need to go gangbusters. On a retail, it's going to be higher cost, longer time. On a rental rehab, lower cost, lower time. That's the main takeaway. Lower cost, lower time, higher cost, higher time. Shoot for the rental side. That's what we're doing. All right. Some people may say, well, duh. But at the same time, people often forget this. Rehabbing properties, guys. Know your numbers. Know your area. Do not over rehab. I'm going to repeat that. Do not over rehab. It's very, very important that you know your area, you know your numbers, and you do not over rehab. So I am very, very, very transparent about my history in this business, my reputation, and my experience. With that being said, I have flipped over 700 houses. I've been involved in over 1,000 transactions. And I've done over 200 I've done close to 200 BRRRR deals. That's the wins. You want to hear about the losses? I've lost money on 2 houses in my life. 2. So I have a pretty good record. 702. The 2 I lost on, I over rehabbed. I underestimated my ARV. And I overestimated my ARV. I thought the property was going to be worth more than it was. And I underestimated, that's where I was going with this, I underestimated my rehab. And I over-rehabbed those 2 properties. So again, 700 plus wins, 2 losses. Why do I like talking about this so much? Because we all lose at some point. It happens, right? Failure is part of the game. And the quicker you fail, the quicker you're going to succeed. And those 2 that I lost on, I don't even look at them as failures. They were lessons. So if I can teach you something here right now, learn from my lessons. Know your area, know your numbers, and do not over rehab. Those are the main reasons why I lost money on the 2 deals that I lost on. And I essentially lost a few grand on both of those. They weren't big hits. But that hurt, losing a couple grand. And now I know not to underestimate my rehab and not to overestimate my ARV. In fact, I go conservatively on my ARVs. And if I get them to appraise higher, icing on the cake. And when I think a property needs 20 grand in rehab, I estimate 25. Just because I don't want to get into a situation where I'm out of money. I basically overborrow. So find out what your lenders want to see. That's another great point. If your lender wants to see, $20,000 minimum on your rehab in order for them to lend you on the appraisal and the appraisal only, then don't go rehab and spend 12 grand. So again, remember in the beginning when I said BRRRR, go get pre-qualified? So what you want to do is you want to walk into your bank, and ideally you go to a local bank. Stay away from Chase, Bank of America, U.S. Bank, any of these big banks. Avoid them like the plague. Reason is they're not going to lend on a portfolio loan. They're going to sell that loan off on the secondary market most likely. And when they're doing these commercial loans, they are typically going to give you a loan that balloons, and we don't want anything to do with a loan that balloons. We want loans that are fixed in terms of their amortization for 20 or even 30 years, and we want the rate to adjust every 3 to 5, but not come due. Very, very important. So personally, we work with local banks and local credit unions. It's very, very important. What's the sweet spot for a bank that I've found? A bank that has between 3, a bank or credit union, that has between 3 and 20 branches. That's the sweet spot. If they only have 1 or 2, they may not have enough customer base yet to really have an appetite to lend to you as the local investor. If they have over 20 branches, they're typically a big bank at that point, and they're gonna be in the transaction business of actually wanting to originate a loan for you and then go sell that loan off, and you don't want that. You want loans that stay in-house, and those are referred to as portfolio loans. So just a quick tip on your banks. Now, the last part of this slide though, find out what your lenders want to see. Again, if they want to see a $20,000 rehab in order to give you what's called the entrepreneurial credit, and every bank, every credit union, they may use a different terminology. They may call it something different. But essentially what you are doing is you are going to a bank and you are saying, hey, what I buy my properties for is none of your damn business. What I want from you is I want you to lend me based upon what it appraises for. And if they say, oh, well, we're not doing that, then walk out of that bank and go find a different one. In fact, you may get told 10 times, 20 times before you find a bank that's willing to do that with you. But you need to be transparent. Don't walk in and try to act like you're doing something different. You want to know how I do it? I walk in, I say, hey, I want to speak to the president or the vice president because I'm dealing with a local bank or local credit union. If that guy's too busy, then I'm going to talk to the next best guy. But ideally, I can talk to the main guy. And I can say, hey, I'm Dave. I live here in St. Louis. This is also where I invest. So I'm local, very important. And I really want to do business with you. And I also tell them I'm using the BRRRR method. Do you know what that is? And if they don't, I educate them on that. And then I say, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a bank that will lend me on the appraisal and the appraisal only. And the banker is typically going to give you a rebuttal saying, oh, okay, so you're looking for the entrepreneurial credit. Well, that's great, no problem. We have a minimum requirement of rehabbing properties at 15, 18, 20. It may even be 30 grand in certain markets. But if you do that minimum required amount of rehab, we no longer care what you bought it for. We no longer care that you might need to have money in the deal. Instead, we're going to just get that property appraised, and we're going to lend you roughly 75 to 80% of what it appraises for. So remember in the beginning when I said our goal is to find a house at a discount, fix it up, and be all into that property for 75 to 80%? Remember that? So if you can do that, and you go find a bank that's willing to lend you and give you a loan on the appraisal and the appraisal only, and they give you that entrepreneurial credit, all of this becomes very, very simple now. So get pre-qualified. It's very important. Find out what your lenders want to see. Don't go rehab and spend 12 grand if their minimum requirement's 22. Just go figure out what they need to see to offer you. And again, what I like to refer to it as the entrepreneurial credit. So they lend to you on the appraisal and the appraisal alone. When a bank asks me what I bought for a property, I say, nice doing business with you. I'm going to go talk to the competitor down the street. There's 100 banks within a 5-mile radius of where I'm standing right now. Use this information to basically tell the bank what you want. And if they can't do that for you, then go find a different bank who can. All right, I learned that at a young age, probably about 10 years ago. Don't just walk into a bank and say, will you give me a loan? And if so, what are the terms? Instead, walk into the bank and say, here's what I want. Can you do that? And if they can't do that, what they're probably going to do is say, well, here's what we typically do. Here's where you want to be. We can maybe come somewhere down a little bit from what they're typically doing. Don't ever just take what they give, right? Go in and actually make them an offer. It's very, very important. All right, moving on. Rehabbing properties, you can hire a GC or a general contractor to help you with these rehabs, or you can learn how to do it yourself. The main thing when it comes to rehabbing properties is that you are going to have to pick two of the following three: cost, time, or quality. So let's just think about this for a minute. What time we got here? It's 11:17, so I'm not even halfway in. This is perfect because I'm almost halfway through this presentation here, which will leave a lot of time for questions at the end too. Uh-oh. Get that off there. Whoop. There we go. Okay. So cost, time, and quality. These are three things that you essentially want to look at when you're rehabbing. You obviously want a low cost. You obviously want a low time commitment. You don't want the rehab taking 18 months. So you want low cost, you want low time, and you want high quality. But you're not going to get all three you're going to get two. So think about it. Pick two. You can have a low cost and a low time, but you're probably not going to have very good quality if they're doing it cheap and they're rushing. If you do cost and quality, you can have a low cost and a high quality, but it's going to take a lot of time. They're going to do that nights and weekends if they're going to do that for you. They're not going to be in a hurry. Let's say you do time and quality. Low time, high quality, it's going to cost you a lot of money to do it quick and nice. Let's say we do quality and cost. Low cost, high quality, I think I just did that one. It's going to be a lot of time. If you do time and quality, low time, high quality, high cost. So just pick two. Just know that going in, all right? I personally don't like to do anything. I'm extremely lazy. I don't swing a hammer. I did that for about 10 months, and I learned one of the most valuable lessons that I've ever learned in my life, and that is that you want to be the boss, making the decisions, writing the checks, not the guy swinging the hammer. I can rehab 15, 20, and sometimes, in some cases in my business, we're rehabbing 25 houses. I can't be at 25 houses at the same time, guys. I want to delegate this business and let somebody else do that work. So don't overthink the rehab part of this. But again, you want to make sure that you pick two when it comes to cost, time, and quality, or just be aware that you're not going to get all three. It's really not necessarily pick two, but think of it this way. You're not going to get all three. So when you're interviewing contractors and they have a high cost, ask them, because it's so high, does that mean you're going to have this thing done in a week or two? Or if they say, this is going to take us 2 months, well, then maybe they should come down on that price a little bit, right? So just think about these things when you're doing it. So when I'm rehabbing, guys, my favorite way to rehab is typically properties that have big items. And this may seem counterintuitive to a lot of you, but I'm going to explain to you right now why. So when I walk into a house and it needs a roof, it needs an HVAC, and it needs windows, and it needs floors. That seems like a lot of work, right? It also seems like a lot of expense, right? But a roof, windows, HVAC, and floors, that's 4 phone calls I have to make. I call my roofer, I call my HVAC guy, I call my window company, and I call my flooring company. That's usually 70% of the rehab with 4 phone calls. So I like the bigger items because they're easier and I don't have to do any of these things. Also, that's going to reduce my maintenance, it's going to reduce my CapEx, it's going to increase the value of the house, and it's going to decrease the lender's risk. Because if they have to take this house back from me, it's now going to have a new roof and a new HVAC and new floors and new windows. So the bigger items a house typically needs, the better, because it's just phone calls that we make. I'm not getting on the roof. I'm not laying floor. I don't know nothing about HVACs. And I certainly can't install a window. I barely know how to open one, right? So don't overthink it. All right, action items. You want to get, I put family, but really you want to get familiar with what houses in your area are selling for. Not family, familiar. And get familiar with what they are renting for. So start paying attention to what kind of finishes they have inside and out and how long they're sitting on the market at their current prices before they are sold or rented. This is what we like to refer to as doing market research. And you can do market research on your phone while you are watching TV. You can do this while you are driving down the highway, although I don't recommend you do that, but you can. All it is getting on Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com or maybe even REI Black Book and looking at the comps on certain properties in your area. You don't have to go crazy when you're doing this. You just want to see what's out there, what's it selling for, what's out there that's being rented, what's it renting for, and what do the finishes look like. I mean, this is just something I do every day. Sometimes I do this 2 or 3 times a day. I just go look at my market. Hey, how many houses are for rent in my area? And what's the average rent? And then the ones that are really low, I want to see the pictures. Are they really crappy houses? The ones that are really high, are they really nice? Just start to get an idea of what the market is presenting. because that's what you are going to be up against whenever you have your house that's been rehabbed and it's ready to rent. So just do some market research, guys. Don't overthink this. You don't need to go to school to do market research. Just look at the market. What's for sale? How much? What does it look like? What's for rent? How much? What does it look like? That's it. That's market research. So that's your action items right now for rehabbing, because you don't want to over rehab. Remember I talked about the 2 houses I lost money on? Not necessarily proud of those, guys, but I lead with that. The 700 plus deals that we've done is great and all. But what's great, what's even better to me is that I haven't lost on 3 deals or 4 deals or 5 deals. I've only lost on 2, and I over rehabbed those properties. I over exaggerated or estimated the end value of it. I underestimated the repairs on those 2. It's only 2. So I love that. Action item though, market research. All right, quick case study here, guys. We purchased this one here on Lang Home for about 80 grand. We used a private lender to buy it. We estimated about 90 days to complete it, 45 for the rehab and 45 days for the refi. We spent $15,000, or we estimated $15,000 in the repairs, and we were supposed to be all in for about $120. We were going to rent it for $1,200. Here was the plan. It was in good shape already. It was mostly cosmetic. We wanted to save the kitchen cabinets. But we did do new floors throughout the entire house. We flipped the bathrooms up. We cleaned it, we painted it, and we brought the property up to code. We ended up spending $20,000, a little over what we expected, but not a whole lot. We were in at $102 total. It rented for more than we anticipated at $1,250 a month. And we actually were able to collect $456 a month in net cash flow after all expenses. So the recap on this one, equity capture of $27,000, monthly cash flow of $456 a month. I didn't use any of my own money to do this. 100% borrowed, leveraged money. 100%. Here's another one real quick. Grenoble purchased this for 65 grand. We used private lender. Again, 90 days, 45 for rehab, 45 for refi. We estimated $6K in repairs on this one, which is low. Usually it's higher. The budget was $90,000 total, and the value was $875 in rent. This one, let's see here, bring everything up to code and make it look nice for the appraiser. We clean and paint the basement with space, so the tenants could have extra room down there. We fluffed up and we redid some of the bathrooms, clean up the exterior, and we focused a lot more on the exterior on this one, it seems like. But at the end of the day, we ended up spending $8 grand, not $6. We were all into this for $73,000. It rented for $975. And the equity capture at the end was $25,000. And our net monthly cash flow was $266 a month. You guys remember whenever I said earlier that this is not a get-rich-quick method? I'm going to repeat that. This is not a get-rich-quick method, but you know what it is? It's a get-rich-for-sure method. And some people, they laugh when I say that, but I'm creating $20,000+ in equity that I don't have to pay any tax on, by the way, when I do these deals. I'm getting into these deals with none of my own money. I'm fixing them up. I'm getting them rented out, and I'm refinancing to pay off that money that I borrowed to buy it and fix it. I now have a home that's been rehabbed on a long-term, low-interest rate loan, rented out at top of the market, paying me a monthly cash flow. So not only am I able to acquire equity, aka create wealth that I can go borrow against or sell the property and capture if I need it, I'm also creating that monthly stream of revenue, which is also referred to as passive income. It's also referred to as cash flow. Who doesn't want passive income? Everybody I know, other than maybe about 6 or 8 people that are basically stay-at-home moms, wake up every day and they go work a job they don't necessarily like. A small fraction of those people actually like what they do. But even those people that like what they do, if they stop getting paid tomorrow, do you think they'd still do it? Hell no, they wouldn't do that anymore. They would go do whatever they wanted, like go to the park at 10 o'clock in the morning for 2 hours. Well, here's the thing. I get to do that. You can too. You got to figure out how to use other people's money to leverage yourself to get into these deals, and then use this method that I'm teaching today to acquire wealth that's not taxed and a stream of income that's also, by the way, taxed at the lowest tax bracket, not the highest like your earned income is.
Household easy, we close fast and anytime that works for you. Your house don't need it, we'll throw cash, it hits so fast, don't know what to do. Wanted her care to keep